Time for breakfast. I have to get to work. I've got a bride and a groom whose dog swallowed their wedding ring. That's what you get for making a beagle your best man.
All right, listen, before we eat, I have something very important to say, okay? Damn, we all still look good.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I got to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are rebooting the 90s.
Yep, 90s reboots. This is something we know about all too well now in every facet of pop culture, right? Movies, TV shows, music, somehow they find a way to reboot songs, right? These are all things from the 90s that are getting rehashed and reimagined in modern forms. This is something that I am kind of nerdy and pedantic about, this concept of a reboot. I remember when this entered the consciousness. I feel like this had a certain meaning that has kind of mutated over the years. So I'll ask you first. When did you sort of encounter this idea of a reboot, or do you have an opinion about this, you know, all the reboots in the movies and everything?
Yeah, so we do this podcast. I'm as nostalgic as the next person, probably a little bit more. I think that we didn't watch Will and Grace for this episode, but that's one of the ones. And I remember being super excited about these kinds of things. But now I feel like it's been going on for so long. Like when we started looking into it, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe Girl Meets World was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, like I was like, whoa, it blew my mind that show started in 2014, but I guess it tracks, you know, one of the stars is now this like young pop star in her mid 20s and she was a little kid on the show or a tween on the show. So yeah, I really was into it and I still like them. Don't get me wrong. Like I enjoyed, some of the new Will and Grace stuff. But I think what happens oftentimes is that they don't change enough. They like just bring back the same people and then it's just kind of the same show and we're just it's a little sad. It's like we don't have any new ideas. We don't have any new entertainment 30 years later.
No, we have something that we know you'll watch because of your fondness for this thing.
Right. But then it's not going to measure up because it's not new and different. They're just going back and like remaking the same jokes. Like remember when that was really funny? And for them it's a good fun too. They're back with their friends and they get to kind of relive old times. I love it when I have a get together with an old cast, but yeah, I like it, but I don't love it. Although I will say I enjoyed some of what we got to watch today.
Yeah, I enjoyed some of what we watched today, too. Yeah, I feel like this reboot thing really kind of came into our lexicon in the early 2000s. That's when I was in my 20s and really dialed into this sort of pop culture and, being an aspiring filmmaker myself. I remember like watching every movie trailer on the Apple Trailers movie site at that time, just really being into that kind of thing. And I feel
you're right. The concept of like a movie reboot like long predates these like TV show reboots.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been thinking about this all morning because, of course, the notion of what reboots, quote unquote, are have always been with us, right? You look back to the earliest movies, Tarzan, Robin Hood, Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, etc. It's all give people properties that they're familiar with, characters that they're familiar with. Have Johnny Weissmuller play Tarzan, have Bela Lugosi play Dracula. All right, do that for a while, and then eventually they're too old, goes out of style for a while, then comes back around. And so, okay, get new actors, get a whole new look and, kind of start all over again. So this has always been happening. But I feel like this new sort of version of it started for me in 2003 with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? That was the first major example of these horror remakes. We weren't using the term reboot yet, but that was the first example that I can remember of this horror movie from the 70s that had spawned all of these crazy sequels over the years, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation with Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey. You know, like these series just get so weird and crazy and dumb, and they're on part 17 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was a case of them going, nope, forget all that. We're coming out with a new movie. It's called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's going to be scary and gritty. That's the term they always used at that time, right? It's going to be kind of artistic because we've got all these new filmmaking techniques that we didn't have then. And I went to it and loved it. Very next year, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. Same thing, a horror movie from the 70s. We're going to strip it of all of its sort of satirical elements, but instead we're going to give it a lot more adrenaline. We're going to use all these modern filmmaking techniques. And again, loved that. None of the, subversive brilliance of the George Romero Dawn of the Dead, but it kicked ass. Yeah. Then 2005, Batman Begins. Right now, we're really getting into the mode of remember all those Batman movies? Remember how they started getting all weird and dumb? Well, now forget all that. We're stripping it back to basics. This guy, Christopher Nolan, he has a way of making it realistic and dark and gritty again, quote unquote. Then next year, 2006, Casino Royale, right? Same thing. New actor, whole new vibe. We don't have weird gadgets and gizmos anymore. This is going to be a down-to-earth, realistic, and gritty James Bond
movie,
And so, a few years later, by the time you get to 2009, you've got the new Star Trek, the new Friday the 13th. And at that point, they were liberally using the word reboot, and what reboot meant at that time, like I said, was some sort of franchise that had gotten unwieldy. That whole idea of a reboot, it's comparing it to your computer. You press the power button, you turn it off, you start clean.
Right.
And that's what all of those examples were. Star Trek is now going to be Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. You don't need to worry about William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, etc., etc.
Even though Leonard Nimoy does come into it.
Yes, that is true. I'm impressed that you know that. But,
I've seen those.
But over the years, that term reboot has changed to just mean anytime we revive something from the past. So all of those examples you were talking about, Will and Grace, Frasier, etc., they call them reboots, and I accept now the way people use the word literally, even though they don't mean literally. Like that's
I don't accept that.
That's just what it means now. You say reboot, it just means we're starting it up again.
Right.
But to me, it's sort of the opposite of a reboot.
No,
if it's a continuation, exactly, then you're picking up where you left off. You're doing the opposite of wiping the slate clean.
No, that's fair.
And we'll talk about how one of our shows here really reboots in a major way to the point
is a what you would call gritty reboot.
Oh, gritty as hell. Yeah. So, all right. Now that I've done with my diatribe, what are our shows? What did we watch?
Well, and we broke the mold a little bit here. This is the first time on the sitcom study that we didn't watch a sitcom. Well, we watched some sitcoms, but one of our shows is not a sitcom. We started it off with Girl Meets World, which is the Boy Meets World continuation. Although, if we're going to use Jay's terminology literally, right? We wouldn't necessarily call it a reboot. And then we have Fuller House, and that is the continuation, the 29 years later of Full House. And we watched Bel-Air, an hour-long drama that is the gritty reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
The first and maybe last hour-long drama to ever be covered on the sitcom study. That's why we're only talking about 3 shows instead of 4 this time. But yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about there. But let's start with Girl Meets World. Now, of course, I'm a little shaky on Boy Meets World, right? We've talked about how that's a little bit after my time. Fred was definitely the Savage that I grew up with. I was not as into Ben Savage.
Yep.
We've covered Boy Meets World twice on the podcast.
Is
One
that
of them
really?
involved a time-traveling microwave or something. Yeah. So one of my favorite podcasters, Griffin Newman, has a catchphrase where he says, I think it's something like Cars 3 makes Cars 2 look like Cars 1. I'm going to say...
What?
Girl Meets World makes Boy Meets World look like freaking Cheers, right? This is not a high quality show.
Okay, look, I think what Girl Meets World is aiming for is a Disney tween show. We're looking at like a Jonas Brothers kind of teen show. We're looking at like and I'm going to say iCarly, but it's just because the main girl kind of looks like iCarly.
Yeah, I would say get iCarly's name out your mouth if you're comparing it to that.
It is not like iCarly at all. Yeah, look, it's a nice show for tweens. It is not... I don't think it's even as interesting as Boy Meets World is.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's not, I mean, before we even get to interesting, just the sort of like professionalism of it. Like, this is one of those shows where immediately from
it's
the
like
very...
Wizards of Waverly Place. You know what I mean?
But again, like, I think we're getting closer with the comparisons, but I would compare it more to like the weird Canadian kids shows or something that you watch, where it's like even the sort of production values.
Don't you put down those
weird.
Canadian kids shows, because that's all we had on Nickelodeon. You can't do that on television as a Canadian kids show.
Yeah, I know, and that's 40 years old. And what I'm saying is it was jarring to watch this show that's done, you know, in a modern world with a modern budget, and it felt really shabby in this way that's like, it's not just like the characters and the jokes or everything, but those are pretty bad too. It's like, again, just from the opening, from the very first moments, I was like, this feels weird. We should say it begins with it's the girl, the main daughter, Riley is her name, and her best friend Maya, and they're having a conversation about whether or not they're going to sneak out, you know, and it just, something about their conversation just immediately was like, this feels off to me. This doesn't feel like a real show. Yeah,
they definitely have not kind of gelled yet as a twosome. This is, you know, I'm sure they probably have had a bunch of rehearsals and shooting days. Apparently this was a reshoot of the original pilot. It used to be that she had an older brother, not a younger brother, and then that got tossed out in some rewrites, and then they cast Augie or Aggie or whatever, the little kid brother, but we don't really see much of him in this episode. But yeah, so I mean, it's not like these actors have had a lot of time to get together and gel as a twosome. They definitely don't have, you know, even though they look like Carly and Sam from iCarly, they definitely don't have, and like one's supposed to be like the good rule following one, and one's supposed to be sort of like the bad girl one.
Very standard.
They look like them. They're supposed to have kind of their personalities, but it's not anywhere near as captivating.
Yeah, and just something about the mise en scène, if you will, you know.
As if we always will.
It begins, like, again, these little things that you don't even necessarily pick up on consciously, but like we talked about how with the Man About the House and Three's Company, how they start with that sort of black box theater vibe of one character puttering around by themselves, or other times it might start in a very sort of aggressive, crazy way, and whoa, what's happening? And this one, like, it starts with the two of them sitting on the windowsill and talking, and just like, yeah, I know, now I'm just saying it again and again, but it's like from those opening seconds in ways that I can't even put my finger on. It was like, ooh, no, that's not how this is quite supposed to go. Like, I don't know if they should have started with one of them entering a room or something. Like, it just felt
so
off.
static.
Yeah, but so of course where this goes is they go to sneak out the window, and then Ben Savage pops in because he's waiting. He's the dad now. He's Corey, all grown up, and I guess he's like waiting on the fire escape. They live in New York City, right? So, that's not how the old show was, right?
No. So I think at the end of Boy Meets World, Corey and Topanga like go away to college and they moved to New York. That was like the thing. They were gonna, you know, they got married, or I guess they went away to college actually on Boy Meets World, right? Because the last couple seasons they were at college. Yeah. So they get married and they move to New York City. That was like end of Boy Meets World. And so that's where they've been for these last however many years. They have a 12-year-old daughter.
You don't stay in the city after you have kids. These writers are going, well, they moved to New York. I guess we got to set it there. No, dummies. You live in New York City for 6 or 7 years, and then you move to the suburbs when you have kids.
Yeah, especially if you're a teacher, right? Well, I guess Topanga she's got more of a high power job because they're living in a brownstone. The kids got, big rooms. It's very nice.
Yeah, I don't have the energy anymore to complain about the, TV representation of dwelling in New York City. It is truly fantastic.
They're brownstone on Bleecker Street. That is gorgeous. So Sabrina Carpenter is the friend, Maya, and she's like super famous now, right? She's got like the album of the summer and everyone's talking about her. So anyway, she is trying to convince Riley to sneak out and go ride the subway because her parents don't let her ride the subway, and she wants to ride the subway, but she can't go out the front door because she'll make a face that her parents will know she's hiding something. So she's, her friend is like, so we have to sneak out the window. So they go crawling out the fire escape to go crawl down the fire escape to go sneak off to the subway, and Dad is there. And then we get the first of what's going to be many across these shows is the entrance applause break that we get for every time one of the characters from the original show shows up on set. And they always get like an entrance through a door. They have to say whatever they're going to say really quickly because then we're going to get a full stop for applause break. And I wish that like when you do the marketing for this, like when you do the little screenshot, I want you to just have a million little thumbnails of those actors when that happens trying not to grin.
Well, here's the
every
thing.
time.
We'll get to Fuller House, and that is certainly not a perfect show either, but that is very clearly shot in front of a studio audience, and we're going to have lots of authentic reactions like you're talking about. With this one, yeah, we get the applause for Corey when he first shows up and Topanga and everything, but I do not think that a single man, woman, or child witnessed the shooting of this. That was not involved.
No,
in
it was total fake, added
that's
in later.
Part of the problem I had with this whole thing is the laughter and everything from the quote unquote audience feels so fake to the point where we've talked about this before. In whatever year this was made, 2014, it almost feels anachronistic. Like you don't need to do this. If you're not going to shoot it in front of a studio audience, don't worry about that. Shoot it single camera and have it look better.
Right.
Right. But yeah.
So there's Corey, and he's the dad, and he's like, you think I haven't done these things? I know what's going on. Whatever. And and so then, I don't know, they go downstairs, or no, Mom comes in and it's Topanga, and we get the same applause break. And so now we come to realize, we know who this girl is. She's Corey and Topanga's daughter. Yep. And look, they're so cute, and they have a couple of one-liners. And then what?
Then we're off to school. We get the theme sequence and stuff.
That's right.
So we discover Ben Savage, Corey is a teacher now.
Yes, he is like rebooted in quotes as the cool teacher with the long hair. And he was like, wasn't he a history? Maybe he was an English teacher.
Sure.
But Feeney was the history teacher, right?
Yeah. This whole thing, look. The idea that you're going to make the show, like you said, a show primarily for kids and therefore about the daughter, I think is totally fine. But I wonder if they wouldn't have done better sort of doing what Fuller House does, which is start with the adult characters.
I completely
and then
agree.
Kind of hand it off to the kids.
Yes. And I was going to say the exact same thing, that what you're talking about that feeling of offness is because this isn't a show that's for all those people that used to love Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
This is a show that all those people who used to love Boy Meets World will put their kids in front of. And that's all. And that's why it's about the kids. And it's just like a Nickelodeon or any other Disney show where you're not going to start on the parents, because who cares about the parents?
Yeah. And that makes sense. But what we get is just we just don't quite know what to make of him. He starts doing his thing as a teacher, and he's a little put upon, and he's a little I guess I don't get what his persona is. And maybe that's fine. You're going to have the whole rest of the show to figure that out.
Yeah, but he's not well developed at all. He just is he's trying to sort of be a cool dad and cool teacher, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, even set aside the dad element. You just don't even know, are we supposed to regard him Feeney is very clear. William Daniels, you understand exactly what sort of character he is, who he is in relation connection to the kids and everything. Right. With this Corey dad/teacher thing, you're going like, so is he like the wise, cool guy that's going to set them? Is he just like a fuddy-duddy? Like you just...
Well, and I think they're trying to set him up as the wise, cool guy eventually, but he's not there. Like you can't have a wise, cool dad until you have kids that you care about. Like Mr. Feeney wasn't the wise, cool neighbor until Corey and Sean had fucked up for 6 episodes, and then we kind of see that,
or even within a single episode, you at least get some sort of coherent arc. And here they're starting with this, like, just this tone that you don't quite know what to make of. And when he starts giving his little lesson about the Civil War, and he starts asking...
it's a war we fought against ourselves.
Yeah, he says, bad things happen when you don't know who you are. And it's like, look, it's any movie ever, it's a cliche, especially in horror movies. They'll always joke about how anytime there's a scene in a classroom, they're always going to be teaching about something that's thematically related to, in every Nightmare on Elm Street movie, they're teaching about, what did Poe say about dreams?
Yes.
What did Shakespeare say about dreams? And so it's that cliche, which is fine, but it seems even more disorienting when he just starts this lesson and the first thing he says about the Civil War is like, you need to know who you are, not any sort of context about like
I know.
The
well,
government.
And on the board behind him, it says the Civil War. What do you believe in and what would you fight for? Yeah. Those are the questions. And I was like, okay. And so that's how he's teeing up, like figuring out your identity. Look, that's a strong pull as a high school history teacher to be like, the Civil War is about identity. Like,
that's the funniest thing.
Whoa.
It is almost like somebody looked up the definition of Civil War in general.
Right.
It's like, a Civil War.
Fight against yourself.
Yeah, and like didn't understand any of the context of what the specific American Civil War was about.
Yeah. No, this is the tap dance that teachers have to do when they live in places like Texas and Florida that won't let you teach actually about what the Civil War is about.
Now, meanwhile, we should say I remarked how I loved it in Full House anytime when they have to make the male heartthrob character for the teen girl. And what does that look like?
He always looks like Devon Sawa from fucking Casper.
Yeah.
That's
to me,
what he
this
always
kid,
looks like.
Yeah, he's a little bit of like a Zac Efron type anyway, but there's this...
He's like blonde, taller than the girls, floppy haired.
Yeah, well, this guy, he's not so floppy. This is 2014, 15, and
he still has some floppy hair.
He seems to me like a guy that had floppy hair at that time, and now he's moved on to this thing, the sort of pushed forward a little bit and cut short. I don't even know what you call it. But we first encounter him on the subway, and then it turns out he's the new kid in this classroom scene that we're talking about. This is going to be Lucas. This is going to be, just like in Full House and Miley Cyrus and all the others, the cute boy that she likes.
Right. And then could we just pause on the subway scenes for a few minutes, though?
Sure.
Because, like, sitcom royalty, Jack A as random
and
subway
she doesn't
passenger.
Get any applause. That's how you know this audience is
Which is ridiculous.
Fake.
How does she not get an applause? Freaking 227. Like, come on. It's Jack A. Sister. Like, she's in everything.
Yeah. And we should say with these subway scenes, they have a pretty realistic looking or maybe even real New York City subway car. And yet they still manage to make the scene completely unconvincing because it's the quietest subway you've ever heard, like there's no ambient
there's no ambient noise. That's true. I'm like, what
no,
subways are you on? They're pretty quiet. Like nobody's talking.
No, there's not talking per se, but there's just all kinds of the subway itself is very loud. And there often is a little bit of a din of people talking to each other and stuff. They're doing this weird fakey post-production thing where they kind of jitter the screen to make it look like it's
they're
rumbling.
Moving. The thing where when she wants, when Sabrina Carpenter, Maya, wants Riley to go talk to this boy, she like takes her hand off the pole so that she flies to the other end of the car and lands in the kid's lap.
Well, I was going to say the part where she gets off the subway, the doors close, and she gets on by just opening them with her bare hands.
With her bare hands,
all
like any,
you cannot do.
Like any 11 or 12-year-old can actually do.
You can
and
stop them.
Yeah, and the fact that like, I mean, without any announcement whatsoever, that train stays at that station for like an entire conversation.
Yeah. Some of these things, they do that in all the movies too and stuff.
Suspend some disbelief there. But those two little girls would have gotten lost on the subway if it was the real subway.
But anyway, we meet Farkle, right? He's our only other sort of major character.
Right,
it seems like he's the new version of
Minkus, and his name is Farkle Minkus. He is his son.
Okay. All right. There you go. He likes to talk about himself in the third person. He calls himself Farkle. His pants are extremely green. I wrote that down. He has like Kermit the Frog colored pants.
This kid is the star of the show. He is so much fun. Yeah. He jumps on Mr. Matthews' back when there's a fire alarm that goes off, and like he elbows Ben Savage in the face like 3 times during this struggle. I was dying laughing.
Yeah. So like we're kind of like meandering all over the place because there's just kind of a lot of stuff being thrown at the wall here.
Look, there's no real story,
the
right?
The crux is that Sabrina Carpenter, Maya, the friend, she's going to start a protest against homework.
Right. Because Mr. Matthews, Corey, is like, what do you guys believe in? And she's like, I'll tell you what I believe in. I believe in not having homework. I'm here for however many hours a day, and I want my night. Why can't you teach me what I need to learn in the 8 hours a day that I'm here? I want my nights back. Let's take our nights back.
Yeah.
Freedom, freedom. And so she riles up the whole class. And then Corey's looking at his daughter and he's like, what are you going to do? Because he gave her this whole long speech that morning about, I know that you're ready to go on the subway, but I don't know if I'm ready to let you go yet. And you don't know if you're ready to go yet. So you need to make this world yours.
Yes.
You need to meet this world. Like they kept like dancing around the stupid.
As you know, my show was called Boy Meets World. So if your show is going to be Girl Meets World,
you got to meet this world.
Yeah, but yes, that is the sort of hook to his.
So she's trying to figure out who she is, and she thinks Maya, her friend, is really cool and kind of has it all together. And so she's like, "Well, I want to be more like her." And so she's like, "Sorry, Dad, I'm with Maya. No homework, freedom, no homework."
Yeah, that all happens. There's a point where when Corey confronts Maya by herself, it's a very similar vibe to when Stephanie confronted Gia and she turned around and revealed the single tear, and then we cut to the commercial.
Oh,
right?
yeah. That was later on, though. That was like the next day when they cut. So, like, they have this protest and then they go home, whatever. And then the next day, Maya and Riley are talking before class, and Riley's like, yeah, I did do my homework. I did yours, too. And Maya's like, you got to stop saving me. That's not how this is going to work. And they have this conversation where Maya's like, look, if you really truly want to be like me, then you can't save me. Like, you have to be like me. And that's going to tee up what happens in the classroom when they protest on the second day.
Yeah, which involves like what? They start lighting up sparklers and everything.
Well, so Farkle has done his homework. Maya stands up on the table and she's like, everybody who did your homework, go and get it and put it on your table. And so she grabs them all the papers, because he'd assigned like a 3-page essay about what they believe in or something, or what you would fight for. And she grabs them all, and then Farkle comes in. I love that name. Farkle comes in with this display, this like trifold display that has sparklers already lit, like sticking out of it. And so she takes 2 of the sparklers and she takes all the homework papers and she stands up on a desk and goes to light them on fire. But before she can touch sparkler to paper, the sparklers are too close to the sprinklers, and then the fire alarm goes off and everybody gets soaked.
Okay, so that's when it sort of culminates in this confrontation where Corey, confronts her, something to do with protesting about the the homework, and she goes, I have nobody at home who can help me with my homework. Tears in eyes. End of act.
She runs out. Yeah.
And of course, that is not even really followed up upon. I guess we'll get more about that in the future.
Right.
But yeah, we're, again, a lot like Gia, the sort of slightly wrong side of the tracks friend. We're also getting this notion that I think this is what Corey is trying to instill in his daughter, Riley, that it's like, you guys are different. Your circumstances are different. So you can help each other by being yourselves and bringing whatever you bring to each other. Rather than you trying to be just like her.
And that's exactly his point to Riley when he gets home is, look, this only happened. The fire alarm and the sprinklers only went off because you didn't step in and help Maya when you knew she had gone too far. You're the thing that keeps her from getting in too much trouble.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why you guys are good friends. But before he can even have that conversation with her, Maya and Riley see each other on the subway. And Maya's like, look, your dad's going to tell you that you're not allowed to be friends with me anymore. And I need you to know that that's okay. Like, we're just not going to be friends anymore because I'm bad for you.
Yeah.
And Riley's like, what? No, like, what are you talking about? My dad would never do that. And also, you're not bad for me. It's fine. And Maya's like basically kicking her off the subway. Like, I don't want to see you anymore. For your own good, get out of here. Go on. Get out of here.
It's like the end of Harry and the Hendersons or any number of movies. Yeah, she literally like places her outside of the subway.
And
that's how we get the miraculous.
Jack Hay's back on the subway again. And she's like, that's your best friend. Don't let her go. Oh, that little girl just opened the subway doors with her 2 hands, which is what we were all saying. There's no way. And so then she comes back in and they have this whole long scene where, Riley's like, no, you're my friend and I'm fighting for you and you're not going on by yourself. You're getting off on my stop. And she pulls her off. And so she's taking her back to her house. So when she has to have this talk with her dad and her family for getting in trouble at school, she's got Maya by her side and she's like, I'm only in as much trouble as she's in because we're in this together. And, I should have stopped her when I knew she had gone too far, but that's okay. Like, this has got to be okay because I'm learning.
Yeah. She says, my civil war is over, Dad. I won. What happens now? Right?
I won. I know who I am.
Yeah. I wrote again that you have no sense of Corey's character besides goofiness. Like, it was frustrating me during the show that you didn't have a sense of like, is he all weird and falling all over himself, but he actually is smart? But now that I have a little bit of distance from it, I'm kind of realizing it's like complaining that Clarissa's parents aren't well developed. Like, they're just not meant to be.
This isn't the show about them.
Yeah. So I guess we need to just let that go.
And they give us a little fan service at the end, right? So you've got the last scene, or it's kind of 2 scenes, but you've got the last sort of scene where they're in the subway. They're at the Bleecker Street
He's
6
given her
stop. Yeah, which is like her stop. And he's like, you're right. You're old enough to ride the subway. Here's your Metro card, not the student Metro card that is free that they get at school. I don't know why Dad's paying for it because they are in LA and they don't know that the kids get free subway cards.
That they have on hand. Also, Farkle is on a first name basis with these random like 25-year-old model ladies that are walking by.
They're also on a first name basis with Sabrina too. In that first scene when they go on the subway, the girls are like, "Hey Sabrina, looking like a 10," or not Sabrina. "Hey Maya, looking like a 10," and she's like, "Thanks, whatever," like noodles or something. She knows everybody at that subway station because she hangs out there a lot, even though that isn't her stop. But okay.
Yeah. And so she gets to go. It's not her maiden voyage, but it's like her first authorized trip on the subway.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a little fanciful variation on the subway announcements. He says, next stop, Astor Place, 14th Street, and the world.
Yep.
Right? And of course, just in case that wasn't cheesy enough, we get Corey looking over at a stay in school subway advertisement that I think the way we're supposed to take it is, in real life within the show, this has a picture of Mr. Feeney as like the mascot for this stay in school thing. And we also get sort of like a Force ghost from Star Wars, just like a hallucination of Mr. Feeney himself standing in front of the thing. So I guess this tells us that William Daniels, the actor, was alive and well, but Mr. Feeney, the character, is dead, maybe? And that's why he's imagining him?
So that is what many, many people asked after the first episode, and the creator of the show, Michael Jacobs, I think his name is, had to come out and say, no. Feeney is alive and well.
You can hallucinate people who are alive.
That's right. Feeney is alive and well. That was just Corey kind of manifesting what Feeney would say to him if he got to see him in this dad moment. Well, and he will be back for future episodes. And so throughout season 1, he appears kind of like that, as like this thought, like this mentor kind of vision that Corey has. But then in later seasons,
it's just the cliches of that being used with dead characters that makes us think. But
I know, and that's what you're not alone. There were so many press and fan questions that exact same question that like before the second episode, he had to like make a statement that wasn't the case.
That's funny. But yeah, look, like I said, this to me is not that good. Like it just the writing. I almost feel silly singling out like the writing versus the acting. It's like across the board shabby. Like I said, is the word I would use.
I know, but again, look, I feel like on this one I got to grade it on a curve. Like they did a little bit of fan service. We're going to see so much more fan pandering, or shall we say fandering. In Fuller House. And by the way, I'm going to say in a lot of the Fuller House stuff, the fandering worked on me. But in this one, I'm not as much of a fan. So of course but look, I feel like we got a grade on the curve of like, what are the stupidest Disney kid shows that you've ever watched? That's what this is.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like this is worse than that. Again, like it may be that there's something about that very first scene that I never quite got over, but even certain things like the sound recording and the subways, like it seemed like the microphones weren't close enough to them. Like there was just this overall crappiness that I was just like, all right, guys,
okay.
I don't know.
Look, but MVPs, Farkle. He's hilarious.
Farkle is fun. I don't know if I would use the word hilarious.
So he is though. Like he stole the show, and I can only hope that he gets better and better. In the way of Urkel, because that is like what he's leaning toward.
All right, let's move on to Fuller House.
This is season 1, episode 1, our very first show again.
Yeah, so this was one I actually watched somewhat regularly, believe it or not. When this came out in 2016, I was freelancing at this time, working from home, watching stuff on Netflix, and for whatever reason, I was kind of curious. And I remember, I don't think I loved it or anything, but this was kind of the perfect thing for me to put on in the background while I was working at the coffee table or whatever. So I feel like I watched, probably most of at least the first season of this, as it started getting going. It was all pretty familiar to me. I have to say, again, I went into this expecting to be sort of goofing on it and, not necessarily to have a lot of great things to say about Fuller House, but within seconds, as soon as this starts, it feels like a real show in comparison to the other ones. You know, it begins with Bob Saget alone on the set with the baby. I think it's Bob Saget and the baby. Yeah, it's the same
first scene as the very first show. It's him and Michelle. Yeah.
And just the fact that you start that way, he's making his jokes about, oh, did anyone see me drop the bread on the floor? It's not like it's anything brilliant, but to me, it's like, this is how you ease into the beginning of a television episode instead of starting with the two kids on the windowsill, going like, should we break out of the house or not, and the acting is like the blind leading the blind. This is just like this nice, easy set. You know, of course, the audience, which is real flesh and blood people, clearly go nuts when they see Bob Saget. And for the next 10 minutes, we're basically going to get the entire Full House cast coming on one by one, being greeted with standing ovations and, you know, just kind of reassembling the whole team.
Yes. And the baby who was on set, that is the youngest of DJ Tanner's 3 sons, had to be removed from the live taping, or the taping with the live audience, because every time the audience cheered, that poor baby would lose, well, the twins that played him would lose his mind. They would and so they had to like shoot around him in that high chair, and have like a doll there for, you know, certain scenes, because it was too overwhelming to have real, you know, with all the sound and all the cheering every time somebody new, every, like you said, 10 seconds would come onto the set.
And of course, last week we talked all about the different tricks of the trade that you can do when shooting with babies, and why you don't want to have 6-month-old cast members on your show. But yeah, we get, I think it's Joey first that shows up, right? That joins Bob Saget on stage.
Comes from upstairs,
and then
from downstairs.
Stamos. We're doing a basically like adults first, right? We're getting one by one, Saget,
the 3 guys,
Coulier, Stamos, then Laurie Loughlin.
I would say, and then Becky comes, and then DJ, right?
Right, then DJ, and then Stephanie, who's got, I think, first of all, I mean, I'll say all of these people have aged very well physically. Everybody looks good. Everybody's still, you know, kind of acting as well as they used to.
Yeah.
For me,
I mean, I think Danny got the like he had the biggest change
he's a little
inside.
puffy, but even he's fine though. Again, 30-year difference. Guy in your 60s, you look great. I think that Stephanie aged really well. I really like Jodie Sweetin's look.
Oh, well, that's good for her. You know, she had a hard road. Like, there was a long time there where she was addicted to meth and heroin.
Yeah,
and so
she's had her hard times. Then, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, you have Candace Cameron, and go into her whole crazy religious, you know, side of things. These people have had all kinds of ups and downs in their personal life, especially Aunt Becky. There's a few points in this that
I know
felt a little queasy.
She's complaining on multiple occasions about having to pay for college for the twins.
Exactly.
And I was like, yikes.
Or just having these kids that are totally out to lunch and don't care about college and everything. Yeah, that kind of hit close to home. But yeah, what I was saying though is that Jodie Sweetin looks great, I think, and I really like her little character gimmick where she first shows up. 2 things. A, she's talking with a British accent because she spent time abroad. And,
she's been living in London.
But B, her stage name as a DJ is DJ Tanner.
Which is freaking great.
Yeah,
I love
that's the one thing in maybe the entire history of Full and Fuller House that I think is a genuinely clever joke.
Yeah, I know,
that her
great.
stage name is DJ Tanner. When DJ goes, why didn't you say DJ Stephanie? And she goes, there already is a DJ Stephanie. Yeah, but there's already a DJ Tanner. So very good, guys. You're doing your best work. So yeah, you know, after a few minutes, we get the whole original cast, and we get, like you mentioned, Kimmy, of course, she's back and better than ever. She looks great too. Andrea Barber, whatever her name is, she looks good. And then we get DJ's 3 children.
Yes. So I think the oldest is like 11, 12. And then you've got the middle one who's like around 8-ish or so. And then you've got the baby, Tommy, who, you know, we
all
see
boys,
little bits.
Used to be all girls.
Exactly. And they're about the same age difference as the kids were at the beginning of Full House as well. So, you know, we're going back and forth here. And then by the end of this episode, right? So it was the 3 men that came, you know, the 2, like the brother-in-law and the best friend that sort of rally around Danny when his wife dies to help raise the girls. And we find out that all of this change, all the reason everybody's back here in this house is because it's a goodbye party and a bit of a family reunion, because DJ has since her husband has now died as well.
He was a firefighter.
Yes. And died, you know, at work somehow. Yeah. And she's now a single mom with these 3 boys. So she's moved back into the house. So her dad's been helping her. But her dad and Becky are still TV show hosts.
Yeah, I just have the sheer quantity of exposition in the first 10 minutes of this.
Like John Stamos literally just says what he's doing out loud, like all the people in the room don't already know.
Yeah, I have to laugh when DJ goes, "Oh, it's just so great to have my dad and my aunt hosting a brand new national TV show. What's it called again?"
Yep.
You know, you just have to imagine, right? You would forget the name of
USA because their old one was Wake Up San Francisco.
Yeah. And then that's when, just like you said, Jesse chimes in with, "Well, let me tell you about my new job." And so, yeah, everyone's got new jobs and new situations.
And you get a little bit of so there was the General Hospital joke there, right? So he says, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go write music for my favorite TV show ever, General Hospital. They do a great job and give all the best actors their start."
That went over my head.
His first job,
Right.
John Stamos' first job.
Yeah.
Was on General Hospital. So, of course, audience chuckle for anybody that knows that, and giggle. And then on you go. We find out that Joey has been living in Las Vegas. He's, a comedian and a kind of like not a headliner, but like a sideliner in Vegas, but having a good life out there. And so they're all just back together for this goodbye party.
Almost all. We get a joke that I think is pushed maybe a little too far when they say,
"You should see the unedited version."
Yeah, where's Michelle? Oh, she's too busy running her fashion empire out of New York. Okay, funny joke about how the Olsen twins didn't want to be involved because in real life they want nothing to do with show business. They're doing their fashion stuff. Okay, fine. Then the entire cast turns to the camera and stares at us, the audience, for 30 full seconds.
Well, it seemed, and this was the thing I was doing. It was actually, for me, it was kind of nice that it was a nice long shot, which, by the way, in the unedited version, which you can see on YouTube, goes on even longer. They make more comments. Each one of them has some comment. Then Uncle Jesse says something and his phone rings. And as he's walking off set with his phone, like walking into the other room, he goes, "It's the twins' lawyer." That's the joke.
They were right to cut that down. It's a funny joke. Absolutely. Do the same thing as when you recast the character. "Oh, you look different today."
You look different, right.
Of
you
course, make a joke about it.
But I really,
guys, it's not that funny.
No, I think what they were doing, well, I don't think, I know what they were doing. If you look at each of their faces, they kind of start out with the actory face, we're making a funny joke. But then as it holds, you watch them kind of all change into more what they really
angry.
Think. Well, some of them are angry, "You guys suck. Why aren't you here?" And some of them are like Danny, John Stamos, Uncle Jesse, Joey, and even Candace Cameron are looking at the camera, begging, "Please come. We want you here." If you look at Danny's eyes, he is telling his daughter that he loves her in that moment. And I was like, whoa, there's some deep shit that is happening in their eyes right now. This is crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. You see it go from a joke to, we could debate about, are they angry versus more hurt or wounded or whatever?
No, I don't know that it's hurt or wounded. I think they were still holding out hope, and I think they did for all 5 seasons, that they would come and they would do it.
Yeah, obviously, I guess what I'm saying is whether it's just a matter of the comedy beat went on a little too long or something deeper than that, I thought that they should have just, kept it as a momentary thing and moved on. Otherwise, like I said, I'm they're doing better than anybody else. They've got their whole lives going and they don't need Fuller House. And so, good for them.
So something that I didn't realize, though, until I was actually reading about the episode after we watched the episode, was that it's not just Fuller House because
their name is Fuller.
Because it's Full House now, we're a Fuller House. Yeah. No, DJ's married name is Fuller. Yes. And I was like, oh.
Always a sucker for the old... stay tuned for my new series, Playing with Matches. I'm Ron Playing, and this is my partner, Philip Matches. It's just, I always love those stupid gimmicks that they would do. Grey's Anatomy, all that stuff.
Right. So anyway, so we find out that all the family is only here for this short period of time. And then that's it. Like, Dad's selling the house. DJ and her sons have to find a new place to live. And she's going to be a single mom of 3.
Yeah. There's lots going on. Every character we mentioned, of course, has to some extent or another some kind of little subplot. I think one of the important things to mention is we also meet, they're going to have a party at some point in the episode.
It's the going away party.
Right. We're going to meet Kimmy's ex-husband, Fernando.
Yes.
And they have a daughter, Ramona.
Yes.
And I know from my vast experience with Fuller House, she is going to be a love interest for Jackson.
The older son?
Yeah, I forget which one's Jackson and which one's Max. Yeah, you see that
They're
beginning.
already trying to set him up.
Yeah, basically what we get in the last 10 minutes or so of this episode, we start to get a taste of what the series is really going to be like.
Right.
Because all of these OG adults that we're talking about, Stamos and Coulier and Saget, they're all guest stars. You know, they're all coming in for this episode. And as the series progresses, you're going to have like maybe every third episode or so, one of them will come by.
Stamos is like an executive producer on this show.
Yes, exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if they all were. And because it's Netflix now, everything's just easier now. They probably shoot these all in the course of a couple months, and it's just... But yeah, so it's like when the smoke starts to clear with all of the standing ovations for Lori Loughlin and all that, we get a sense of what the real meat of the show is going to be, which is the kids, Jackson and Max, I think. And
Tommy.
Right. Yeah. And Ramona, Kimmy's daughter, who's the same age as the oldest boy, they're going to start to have a little flirtation thing. Kimmy and Fernando getting back together or not is going to be a thing. We get Steve, the guy...
Yep, DJ's boyfriend from high school.
Played by the voice of Aladdin from the Disney movie. He shows up again. He's also aged pretty well.
Yeah.
So, and he's talking about, I should have asked you to marry me after the prom or whatever.
Yeah, so, he's like, I know you're not ready yet, but I would really like to maybe try again when you are.
Yeah, so all of those things are going to be where the show really lives once we finally get the uncles out of our hair. But what we're going to get to sort of stimulate all that is the modern version, or at least like a different twist on the old sitcom eavesdropping trope, which is the baby monitor.
Right. So DJ is, throughout this episode, she keeps trying to, even though there's a ton of people in the house to help her with all the different things, she just keeps trying to like push everyone aside because she's like, look, everyone's leaving. I have to do all of this on my own. She's got the chore chart where she's like erasing everyone who's been living in the house and she has to do it all.
It's also a mom trope, like Tina Fey in Date Night, same thing. Like, oh, let me do it. It'll be easier if I do it.
I'll just do it because then I don't have to watch you and worry about you doing it wrong. I totally understand that impulse. And so she is just like, she's a veterinarian, and Steve shows up with, what is it?
Oh, Comet Jr.
Comet Jr.
Yeah, Comet, of course, we met like halfway through Full House original run, Labrador.
Exactly. So this is the golden that is now like, Comet's son's daughter or something. And she's pregnant, and she's been trying apparently to give birth all night. She's Steve's dog and hasn't been able. So she's, in lots of pain. Rather than taking her to the fucking hospital, he just goes over to DJ's house and is like, hey, you're a veterinarian. And she's like, hey, Max, get my medical bag and meet me in the backyard.
Yeah.
Somebody grab the kiddie pool. And
Danny asks them not to deliver puppies in the living room because it's just been cleaned.
So she's doing that. And then, but Tommy, the baby, has an earache and she meant to put drops in his ears, but she got distracted because she had to help deliver these puppies. And then Max is like wailing and begging, please let me have one of the puppies. You said I could eventually have a puppy. And so it's like all coming to a head. She's telling Max no, and he's begging and begging, and she's saying no, and everyone's standing around, and he's begging and begging. She has to she feels bad, but she just has to keep saying no. And then somebody like the baby monitor goes off, and she remembers that Tommy has an ear infection and that she hasn't given him his drops yet. So she goes running upstairs and she's just all upset and she's crying and she's, giving him his drops and she's just talking to the baby.
Yeah, she's doing that sort of, soliloquizing basically, but in the form of, confiding in the baby and saying, I'm so overwhelmed.
I don't know how I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's just us. How am I going to handle all this? And so, of course, the entire extended cast is hearing this conversation through the baby monitor from the kitchen. Joey and Jesse and Danny and all the sisters and cousins and everybody. And so it's kind of nice, I think, when DJ comes back down, and at first Danny, the dad, is like, I'm canceling our TV show.
Yeah, we're not doing
which
it.
I was incredulous. I'm like, even on a show like this, come on, you don't cancel your TV show deal, just like on a whim like that.
I mean, at that point, at this point, he could just retire. It would be fine.
I guess.
But he's like, I'm canceling the TV show. Lori Loughlin, and Becky, by the way, is like baby crazy, wants another baby, is like, keeps trying to take Tommy away from DJ. Like, it's fine. I'll carry him. I'll take care of him. I could just take him with me too. It's fine. So they're all the three guys and Becky are like, we're not leaving. And then Kimmy and Stephanie are like, sit down.
Yeah,
older
Stephanie's
generation.
the one who's like, no, you guys did this already in the first Full House.
Right.
Now it's our turn. It's Fuller House. We'll handle this. And then Kimmy kind of gloms on like, yeah, me too. I'll live here too.
And they're like,
great.
what? You will? But it's the same situation, right? Instead of
Joey was just a friend. He's only an honorary uncle.
Joey was best friend, Kimmy's best friend, and then you have brother-in-law, and in this case, you have sister.
Exactly. So, we get the setup for our new show. It is, again, it's, same thing that they did with the movies, like the new Star Wars movies and stuff. You repeat the story. You keep all of the old people around, but sort of, like a volleyball game, you rotate them into a different position, and then you bring in the younger cast members to act out that original story beat.
So we need to talk for a second about this technique that they used throughout the entire show, where every time they would have a scene that was exactly mirroring, and sometimes it was even like the open,
Well, they did it primarily in that.
But they did the scene with the
Flintstones song.
The Flintstones song. They did they did a split screen.
Yeah, screen A/B comparison.
Exactly. So when it's the exact same movement, down to the
the camera angle, the blocking,
everything.
They basically they recreated the original opening sequence, and then they recreated the scene where they're singing the Flintstones theme song to the baby to get them to go to sleep. And much like The Disaster Artist, the movie that James Franco made about the making of the movie The Room, when you do one of these things where you match the camera and the blocking and the editing and everything exactly, you need to make sure the audience knows that. Otherwise, you did all of that research and everything for nothing, because it's not like people are going to remember oh yeah, Stephanie's in the exact same position that Joey was in 30 years ago.
No, I mean, they're doing the thing that is kind of cute though, of when you get together with all your cousins you haven't seen in 20 years, and you take the same photo in the exact same spot, but you're all 35 instead of 5.
Exactly. So they're doing a split screen to show us both, which is fun. It's a little unnecessary, or maybe especially when it's actually in the body of the episode, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And they do it a few times, and I don't know. I thought it was cute. It was when I'm talking about, fan service, fandering, that's exactly what was happening.
It gets to the point where I don't even mind it, but what I would say is that this episode in particular, it's not even an episode. It's more of just like an event almost. It's halfway between a narrative episode and these things they have on HBO where the cast
like a Brady
gets
Bunch
together.
Special where they would bring everybody back and they would sing some songs. Yes.
So anyway, look, I think we're sort of both on the same page with this being a pretty big step up from Girl Meets World.
I wonder though if we'd watch something else, or if this was our first one, and we contemplated a Doogie Howser and some of the other ones that are out there in the world, like the Roseanne and Will and Grace. But we ended up kind of going with these 3 shows. I mean, Boy Meets World wasn't one of ours, but in terms of like these sort of classic 90s shows that are just so like important in like the life of so many of the people that are our age or a little bit younger than us, that I think these were the 3 we had to go with. And I just wonder if we would have liked Fuller House as much if we hadn't watched Girl Meets World first, because it was kind of it could only go up from there.
Yeah, it definitely benefits from that comparison for sure. But I will say, like, Fuller House, again, it is what it is. It feels more like a reunion event than a proper narrative, but it's still, I think it does a really good job of being what it is. I think we have Fuller House to thank for a lot of these subsequent reboots that happened.
Right.
And I think that, they use that Netflix power. Like, I noticed that there's a little bit racier humor, because instead of having to...
I noticed that too. When Kimmy was having that conversation with her ex-husband, they didn't have the daughter on camera, but she's still in that scene. And I was like, I'm really glad. Like, first of all, you should not be having this conversation in front of your daughter. Ew. Talking about how he slept with all these other women, but how Kimmy was like the best lay ever.
Yeah,
and like his 12-year-old daughter standing right behind him, and none of the cast is saying anything. Like, nobody's saying anything. But yeah, the shot was made so that like she was out of it. And I'm like, she's standing right there. We know she's standing right there. That's weird.
Yeah, there's jokes about boobs. There's even just, they say the word sex that I actually wonder if they would have said that in the original TGIF version. I think it's the difference of when you're doing something for Netflix, you're only beholden to your own judgment, or to Netflix's judgment about what would be good for a family audience,
right,
as opposed to the specific standards
censors,
standards and practices, about like a network with advertisers and all that.
Well, and the time that it would air.
So I guess I'm just saying, in general, I think that it is what it is. It's not a masterpiece, but I think they did a good job of kind of harnessing everything that they had, all the sort of modern resources, and making it like a pretty good version of itself. Like, this definitely could have been much worse.
I kind of enjoyed this. I think if we were to talk just about the 2 that we've watched so far, I would probably never be interested in seeing another episode of Girl Meets World. I might watch another episode of this.
Yeah, and a lot of it is because the young actors, I think, are really good. And so, like we talked about with the little kids that grow up too fast, you get a lot out of that.
The kid who plays Max in this, the middle son, I thought was really funny.
Very good. All right, so now we're going to get a major turn. We're going to get a big change in mood as we move on.
We're going to get a true gritty reboot.
Gritty, dark, realistic take on Bel-Air.
This one's called Dreams and Nightmares.
Yep. So based on the definition that I was talking about earlier, this is our first real reboot. This is like going back to basics, changing the whole tone, totally new cast. I remember, like the old folks with the Kennedy assassination. I remember where I was when I found out about the existence of Bel-Air. Sitting on my laptop.
I was saying, did you see the little short film?
I don't think
that came out first.
I don't think I saw that. I just saw a little AV Club news blurb, like they always do, about the stuff that's coming up, and they had the usual sort of snarky spin on it about what a bizarre idea it was, and then watching this trailer and being like, yeah, they made a gritty reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, this is the weirdest thing I ever seen,
Well, so in 2019, the guy who did this show made this fan short film that was, kind of like a joke, kind of like the Family Matters one that they did on SNL, like the gritty reboot of Family Matters.
Oh, yeah.
Which was great. And I was like, actually, that would probably be great. Like, they should do that. But apparently this started the same way. This guy made like a fan, gritty reboot short film. Mm-hmm. And it was, it sort of became the trailer for this. And Will Smith saw it and it kind of went YouTube viral. And people were like, no, we actually should do this. This looks good. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And so we get, it's funny, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song, of course, the famous rap that tells the origin story. That was our number one pick for both of us of the greatest TV sitcom theme song of all time. And it's so good that, they decided to stretch out the story told in that theme song into, the first 40 minutes or so of this episode. It's wild. So, this starts. Very first image is, is probably in a sense one of the most direct references to the original show we're going to get. It is this dark, like horror movie version of the graffiti throne from the original theme song, right? Yep. Which that in turn was sort of taken from his Parents Just Don't Understand. Yeah, that music video had this white set with all of the, it was graffiti, but it was like Nickelodeon graffiti. It was very bright, friendly vibe. And it was like they used that same set for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song where he's sitting in the throne and the camera turns upside down. Yes. And you've got all of the, the silly graffiti all around him. And so the very first shot of this is just going to be this like disembodied throne in this like dark alleyway.
And the light keeps like flashing behind it. And you can see it goes from sort of dark with the graffiti being a lighter color, like a black light effect. Then it's the like almost white background with the graffiti just being like black lettering and black numbers and stuff. And so we get that as just sort of like this opening mood setting that again it is which turns out to be a dream. Like this is him dreaming. He and his mom have this saying where it's like, your crown, your crown is in front of you. You just have to reach out and grab it. And so that's him dreaming about it because we find out later after he wakes up that he's got a big basketball game that day and he's being scouted by BCU, which is a university in Richmond, Virginia. And he is, straight A student and he is, on the path. He is on his way up and out of the hood where he lives. Yeah,
we get lots of shots of the Nike logo. I started wondering if this was a Nike production when he's getting dressed. He just really loves his sneaks. But tons of really flashy cinematography here. This is, just to say that this is a single camera show does not do it justice. Like this is a full on, this looks like a movie. And it really, especially during these early high school scenes, they really just are doing all kinds of crazy stuff with the camera, keeping it very lively and dynamic.
And it feels almost, and because, this episode is called Dreams and Nightmares, like you're saying, like a lot of the beginning of the show is the sort of drawn out narrative version of the theme sequence of the story of how he ends up.
We're in West Philadelphia. We meet the mom and everything.
Right. And so, but it feels almost like, those episodes of Atlanta when they don't do anything with the characters that are in the actual show Atlanta and they just have some sort of like weird fever dream that, Donald Glover has come up with and is like, let me make a comment about race by doing this totally random other thing right here in the middle of my series. That's what this feels like a lot of the time because it's these people that, I've never seen them before. They're not anything. It's not, they have the names of Fresh Prince characters, but it's not the ones that we know. And they're, it's this gritty reboot. So we're definitely making comments about class and race and, wealth and poverty.
Which, to be fair, Fresh Prince was always doing.
Yes, absolutely. Just in a much more like lighthearted, you can overlook it if you're white enough way. And so, but I was really struck by that I was like, oh man, this would not be out of place in the middle of a season of Atlanta.
Yeah. It is, an hour-long drama in every sense. And it's got that reboot thing of just really making a narrative meal out of every, that thing that you glossed over in 10 seconds in the original one. We're going to devote a whole episode of our HBO series to that,
So So the one little fight and my mom got scared.
Yep.
That is basically like we're finding out all about the lead up and the actual one little fight. So what we find out is that the one little fight on the basketball court is not as like glossy and silly as Will makes it out to seem.
He was not lifted up over their shoulders and twirled around like in the theme song of the original thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is on the one hand, I feel like this is a scenario that, you know, people could find themselves in. So I don't want to say like something like this could never happen, but it's got the same kind of thing that we were talking about with Ross and his like sleeping with the copy girl scenario, where everything is sort of perfectly contrived for the main character to be like completely blameless and yet find themselves in a difficult dilemma, right? He's got these.
I mean, yes, and right, like there were definitely many moments, and we see this once we're out. Like once we're in Bel-Air and we're past the theme sequence and we're now like into him trying to settle in his life in LA, he has a penchant for making bad decisions. Yeah. Like in the same way of like, are you calling me chicken? Right. You know, Back to the Future style.
And he does eventually sort of do that even in this situation. But let's describe what happens. His friend is the one that gets a gun, right? Because these people, these other kids. Yeah, so they have this, there's this guy who I guess used to be their friend, but now he's like dropped out of school and he's a banger on the block. That's
like
Rashad, right?
That's Rashad. He runs the block. He's like the block captain for the local gang. And he's not their friend anymore because they're like still nerds and in school, and this guy's out running the street. And so they bump into him while they're eating their cheesesteaks at some like, you know, bodega or whatever. I don't know if they call them bodegas in Philly, but they're like leaning up against the wall of some, you know, like deli, and they're eating their cheesesteaks, and this guy comes up and he like, here's the thing. I would think that most straight A students who have watched their friends go to the streets and end up in this lifestyle would not take the like put downs that come from them with so much weight. But Will does. So this Rashad guy basically insults him and is like, you wouldn't be being scouted if I was still on the team. You know, you couldn't beat me. And the girl that Will likes, and like these two other girls who have been kind of, you know, we've seen them earlier in the episode be like, hey, Will, are you coming to that party tonight? They all see this happen. And so this guy steps to him. And so he feels like his rep, his cred is like being questioned by this guy. And I'm like, this guy's a loser. He's dropped out of school. You know, he's a loser. Like, he's only saying this because his life's going nowhere. Like, let it go. But Will didn't want to let it go. Will's like, all right, you know, we should play. Let's play sometime.
Yeah, what he says to his friend Trey is that scholarship doesn't mean shit if I don't have the respect in my own hood. Right. You know, so that's his like worldview. First priority is respect of your peers in your hood.
And we find out earlier as well that he doesn't really want the scholarship. He doesn't want to leave Philly. He really likes where he lives. He's comfortable there, and he is nervous about leaving, going away to college, leaving what he knows. He doesn't want to do it. And his mom is like, I know it's scary, but you're never going to make anything of yourself. You just hang out here. You've got this opportunity. You're going to have to take it. Like, this is what we're doing. So we already see the hesitance. We already see the, I want to be the king of Philly. Like, I really like it here. And then we see him make this bad decision to go and try to defend himself against this guy, Rashad. So he shows up at the street ball, like basketball court at night.
Yes. The friend has the gun. I just want to point that out. It's the friend's idea to bring the gun.
So Trey, he meets up with Trey before they go there. And earlier in the day, when he and Rashad have been trading barbs at this deli, Rashad like flashes his gun. And so Trey's like, oh shit, get gets a gun, has it in his backpack.
Yeah, just so we're safe.
Just as protection, right? Just as protection. So, you know, of course, Chekhov's gun. This is how it's going to play out. They go to the game, the Will challenges them.
Yeah, he bets his servitude. The guy's like, he says, if you win, I'll break you off $2,000. If I win, you work for me on the street.
Right. And this is not Rashad who says that. This is like the captain, right? This is the big boss who is making this deal. So Rashad's going to play the game with whatever other flunky he picks from that guy's crew. But this is like the big boss. So Rashad's like the block captain. This guy is the neighborhood. Like he runs all the drugs in the neighborhood. He runs the gang in the neighborhood. And so this guy is way older and super scary. I mean, he's menacing when he talks, and like you can see like the way the actors are around him, everybody kind of like they give him that gravity of like he's a scary dude. He's not fucking around. And so Trey's like shaking his head, like, don't take this bet. You don't want this. You're like, we don't want to work for this guy. That's not a bet you make. And even if you think you can win, and Will's like, I got this. Don't worry. We're going to win. And they do. And so great. Like, awesome. Well, as they're cheering each other and yay, they win. And the other guy's looking angry. Like he pulls out his wad of money and starts counting, but he's not happy about it. Rashad starts kind of slinking off into the darkness because he's so upset that he lost, and he's still holding the basketball, and he hurls the basketball into the crowd, like into the group. And I don't know if he was trying to hit Will or Trey, or if he was trying to hit the other guy. Well, because, so if you read like the synopsis from the producers, they say that it was on purpose that he hit that guy.
A false flag basketball.
So that it would start a fight.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this guy, Rashad, throws the basketball and it hits the neighborhood boss in the side of the face, and he slinks off into the darkness. And that guy's like, who threw that basketball? Yeah. Like, bleh! And he thinks it's Will, or he thinks it's Trey. And then it's like, no, man, we didn't do it. What are you talking about? We're excited, you know. And Will throws a punch and hits that guy in the face. And then the gang all jumps in and starts beating the shit out of Trey. And he's on the ground, and they're kicking him. And I mean, they're going to kill him. Like it's not good. They're like, 8-on-1, and Will has kind of now gotten out of it. And so he goes over to the bag, grabs the gun, fires it 2 times in the air. Everybody scatters. Police show up.
Yeah. So just, the point I was trying to make was like, it's this other guy who lobs the basketball and conveniently doesn't get seen by anybody, you know? So there is a point where you're exactly right. Will makes a decision to throw a punch when he doesn't have to. So it's definitely not right to say that he's blameless, but it is this very...
Well, he also makes the decision to go there and play basketball.
Yeah. There's lots of bad decisions.
Like, you don't take that bet. Like, none of those are good decisions.
But the way this plays out is just that it seems to me anyway, like this very sort of specially crafted scenario where these key things happen beyond his control, and the decisions that he does make are understandable. So like, I'm just saying it all is sort of calculated to put us in the position of still being very much on his side and seeing that he has flaws, but the gravity of how, shitty his situation isn't proportional because of these key things that have gone wrong.
So now we're in a situation where this guy, like, they both get arrested, they both get caught. The like main guy from the block, not the block boss, the neighborhood boss guy.
They've got like a blood feud now. He's glaring at him from across the prison cell.
From like 2 cells away. Exactly. This guy is like, he's like, I'm going to kill you. He puts a gun to his head, like, he
gives him the old bang, bang, you're dead motion.
I'm going to kill you.
The universal sign.
Right. And so this is like while they're in prison at night, we see Will crying because he realizes that he's gotten himself way over his head. And then the next morning comes, and the cops come in and they're like, hey, you're getting out. And all the other guys that are in the overnight holding cell are like, what the fuck do you mean he's getting out? He hasn't even seen a judge yet. And when you're in the holding cell overnight, like, first thing that happens is a first appearance. You don't get out until you have, like, that's where they set bail.
Circumvented the whole thing.
So something's going on. So they all immediately assume he's a snitch. Like, he's going to, like, has talked or is going to talk. And that's why he's getting out. So that's it. Like, you're dead. So now, like, he can't even go home.
Yeah. And so that's where, again, the whole thing of got in a fight, my mom got scared. Like, that's all been leading to this.
That
like,
is the one little fight.
Mom,
like, that's the one little fight.
In the car, like, on the way to the airport,
he's
going
looking out the window going, wait, where? He sees Philly and he's like, where are we going?
He's going, or she's explaining, your Uncle Phil, who is a attorney in California, he pulled some strings. I'm getting you out of here. You're not safe. And he's devastated by all this for the reasons you said. He loves Philly. He wants to be a big fish in a small pond. He wants to be the prince, if you will, of West Philadelphia. But it's at this point, about 20 minutes into the show, that we get the title Bel-Air, right? And it's like, this, we haven't even left the East Coast yet.
Yeah. So then we get a quick little, and again, fan service, right? We get a quick little shot of him on the airplane
with the champagne glass.
The first class, drinking orange juice out of the champagne glass. That is one of the lines in the extended version.
Yes.
Yep. That Jay can rap by heart, but I don't know the extended
orange
version.
Juice in a champagne glass. This might be all right. Yeah.
There you go.
Something that probably rhymes with flight, first class flight.
Something like that.
I will say, continuing that tradition, the next scene, we get the cab with dice in the mirror, just like the original, but then a shocking departure from the original source material, if I may say.
Yes.
The cabbie is Jazz.
That's right.
The role originated by Mr. Jeffrey Towns, also known as DJ Jazzy Jeff. They decided to collapse that character and make him, we should have known this when he says, driver, could you pull off the road? I need to just stop at a very beautiful scenic location for a few minutes and like ponder. Yeah. So we get this scene that's just destined to be in the trailer, with Will, the cabbie, who also happens to be another young black man who's telling him, this town, it's going to make you try to forget who you are and where you came from. So don't let it do that to you. Yeah. And the two of them look out onto the LA skyline from this nice perch. And we should have known by there that this is going to turn out to be Jazz, but we don't formally find that out until he drops him off. Yeah,
until he drops him off. And so now we're in Bel-Air. Now it's, like you said, halfway through this show, and we just have done the theme song that was at the beginning of the original Fresh Prince.
Yeah, and I think probably like the original show, the first character we meet is Jeffrey. Yep. He's not a butler anymore, he's a house manager, which made me start to wonder, do we not have butlers anymore? Or is this a semantic thing, like how stewardesses are flight attendants now? Is it just that we have that same position, but we don't call them butlers?
I don't know. And it was interesting that, because they have Hillary doing all the cooking in this show, because she is, she's an influencer. And one of the things, like one of her things that her channel does is that she likes to cook. And so they don't have Jeffrey, like they have Jeffrey on an iPad sitting at the breakfast bar while Hillary is cooking. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
He's kind of like Benson at the end of Benson.
Right. Yeah. Well, at Benson at the end of Benson was lieutenant governor and running for governor. Yeah. So, I do get the sense he's more like Uncle Phil's assistant.
Yes. Yeah. Again, he says house manager. So it's ambiguous, but
to me, a house manager is somebody at a theater, I don't know what that is I'm not rich enough to know what that is in a regular house, I guess.
He reminds me though, this characterization is a little bit like there's one of the many Batman iterations where Alfred is played by Andy Serkis, and he's got this beard, and he's meant to be kind of a badass character. And
which Batman is that?
I think that might be the Pattinson one. But yeah, you kind of get the impression like this Jeffrey maybe has done some military service, like he's got like he could maybe break your neck in 5 different ways.
That backstory that we find out about Jeffrey like throughout the original series, that he has all sorts of like training that we didn't know about. Yeah, that's all true in this one.
Yeah, but we do, as he shows him in, we get some talk about King Kobe. Is that like the basketball player?
Yeah.
Okay. I was not following this exactly. I dropped out of NBA like knowledge in the 90s.
They were like shouting out to Kobe who's dead.
But you get this recurring thing now between the cab driver and this, that Will is connecting with the working people.
Right.
Like he gets along well with those people, and he's going to be
and Aunt
out
Viv
of place.
Kind of understands.
Yes,
like Aunt Viv, she has these like one-on-one conversations with him where she's like, look, I see what you're going through.
She's the first one we're going to meet, and you can tell she comes down. She has a sort of Michelle Obama type look to her.
Very much.
She's like, yeah, welcome or whatever. And you can tell, they're having a party, and Will says like, oh, cool, let me join the party. And she has this moment of hesitation like, okay, yeah, that's okay.
We just got to get you in a suit.
Yeah. Now, I want to stop here and just talk about this characterization of Will in general, because I think this is one of the things, as the show goes on, I'm going to say it wins me over in general. In terms of like
he's great.
Why it exists and like why somebody would watch it. Because at first, this frankly did seem like a punchline, a gritty remake of The Fresh Prince.
Right.
But I think one of my biggest sort of concerns is the original Will Smith character, right? Who is like very goofy and zany and silly, but is also kind of a ladies' man and also kind of has this like street cred and does kind of have the respect of his peers and stuff. Like there's a lot in there that's maybe a little bit contradictory, but that character and that persona came to us fully formed as the Will Smith Fresh Prince thing. And like we knew exactly who that was. I don't know if that's who he was in real life per se, but that was his real
he was
star
aiming
persona.
He was like, the big difference is that he was more like a C's will get you degrees kind of guy.
But whatever it was, like it was a genuine thing. That was not a character he came up with. Exactly. That was him. And that contradiction of the silliness versus the machismo or whatever, like all of that was just a genuine thing that you didn't have to reconcile it because he reconciled it for you. It was who he was.
It was just who he was.
With this show, as it goes on, what I find is that this Will, all of the other characters have changed. Carlton, Hillary, whatever, they're fundamentally different from who they used to be, and we're just going to meet them anew. This Will character, he starts to have that zaniness and silliness in this party scene. We start to get senses of that bull in the china shop thing that was such a hallmark of the original Will Smith character.
Yeah, everybody, and like when everybody talks about him, they're like, hey, that kid's got a lot of swag.
He's all, but I guess what I'm saying is that for me, I find this characterization a little hard to get a read on. Like the silliness kind of takes me by surprise because this dark, gritty world that we've been introduced to, like he doesn't seem that silly, and it doesn't seem like you can be that silly in this vibe. And so when he starts having an attitude in this garden party that harkens back to the Will Smith from the original sitcom, it starts to feel weird. And it's a note that I start having throughout the episode is like, oh, I like this and I like this character, but it is hard to get a handle on like, so is he like a silly weirdo? Is he because sometimes he's a stoic tough guy is I guess what I'm saying.
Sure.
And the contradiction between the stoic tough guy and the silly weirdo is harder to reconcile with this character that is being created in the usual way by a writer and an actor and stuff versus that Will Smith tornado that just arrived fully formed.
Wow. So I didn't have any of those issues, and I'm going to tell you why. Because every time this actor's name is Jabari Banks. How funny is that? His real last name is Banks. Huh. So this kid I think he's an amazing actor. every single time he has to do that stoic tough guy thing, you see it take this emotional toll on him. And in the next scene, he's got like a single tear running down his face.
Not unlike Gia.
Right. Or you see the tears like welling up behind his eyes while he's trying to be so tough. This is a I'm a cry. This is a little boy who lost his dad. This is a little boy who has grown up in this sort of like one foot in two worlds, right? And so he does know how to put on this like bro show, but he is the funny, charismatic, I want to have a good time guy. And like sometimes his mouth gets too big in those moments and it sucks him into the shitty world. But because he knows that his mouth gets too big sometimes and it sucks him into that shitty world, he knows how to handle himself. And he either diffuses or he is a little bit like, step back and a little bit more, threatening. But never is he as dark and as depraved as some of the guys we were seeing that were in the gang.
He's always
at the beginning,
least depraved.
Right?
That's true.
And it is, like I was saying, it like you see it take a toll on him and you see him light and happy in all these other times. And you see how much it's like tearing him apart that he keeps having to like stand up and be tough and do this when he doesn't want that, but he walks into the locker room to come hang out with his cousin, and his cousin's dancing in the middle of a group of white boys and they're saying the N-word because it's what's in the song. And he's like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like thinking he's, gonna step in and be like, well, this isn't all right. And then Carlton is telling him to back off, that this is normal. This enclave of wealth and privilege and just being so disconnected from the real world. And Will, being someone from the real world, walks into that and is like, the fuck do you think you're doing? Like, you don't get to say that. And Carlton's like, how can you expect them not to? It's what the rappers say to them to get them to buy the albums. And I'm like, whoa. And Will's like, are you kidding me? Like it was I thought that was a great scene.
Yeah, and all of that is well said. I guess at the end of the day, I am just used to the more sitcom style characterization, and
this isn't a sitcom. No, they have to have that balance. Exactly,
and I think that maybe if I went back and watched it again, it is better established. I just feel like watching it the first time, like I said, it strikes me by surprise when he's so silly, and I'm like, he didn't seem that silly before, but I bet they do kind of weave that in. But again, it's just subtle, and we're just used to it being more hit you on the head. But before we get to the craziness in school, we meet the family one by one at the garden party. We get Hillary first, like you said, or we get the mom first, but after her, we get Hillary. She's an Instagram influencer. She's got 75,000 followers. So she's not vapid and dumb like the original Hillary.
No, but she does have this sort of...
She's very LA. She's very,
Well, and I mean, I think being an influencer has its own connotation. Like, even if you're, the most successful at it, there's still sort of an element of vapidness in having that as your career.
True. But she comes across as more savvy, and she takes Will into the house and lets him borrow Carlton's clothes. She says conveniently Carlton thought he was going to have a growth spurt and he didn't, so he bought all these clothes that would fit you and not him.
Right.
And so he gets to wear his nice threads. We meet Ashley. We get probably the least from her, from the new Ashley. Not again. I was in love with Tatiana Ali as a young boy. So this girl, she's all well and good, but doesn't hold a candle for me.
Maybe we'll see more in later episodes.
But then we get Carlton. So in this version, Carlton is not the Tom Jones loving goofball nerd that he is in the original one. He's kind of a psycho. Like, I know I say it every time, but I get a Patrick Bateman vibe off of this Carlton. Very, very intense.
Yeah.
He does not like that Will is wearing his clothes. No. That's the first thing he says to him, basically.
He's like,
Who are you?
Yeah, why are you wearing my clothes?
Yeah. And we just get immediately this hostility, and then Carlton, anytime that he tries to be nice, it comes across like a lunatic trying to be nice. Like, he has a very furtive,
he's
intense...
it's creepy.
Yeah. We're going to find out as it goes on that he's got drug issues. Like, he's got all kinds of stuff going on.
He's snorting Xanax, like, a lot. And we also find out, but we don't get the story because it's just alluded to. So there's a very attractive young woman at the party who immediately notices Will, and Will immediately notices her. And it turns out that she's Carlton's ex, and her dad is this guy, Fred, who's like going to be a major donor to Uncle Phil's campaign for, is it like state attorney or something like that?
Something like that, district attorney.
Yeah. And so, she's like very much like involved in this world. She says to Will, like, hey, go easy on Carlton. Do you know his whole story? Yeah. And Will's like, no. And then the camera cuts away to like Carlton having a conversation with somebody else. So we don't know his whole story.
He's got a crazy backstory.
So whatever his like psychoness is might be well earned. We just don't know it yet.
He earned his psycho stripes.
Like, we just don't know it yet. Like, I could imagine that he was the Tom Jones loving kid and he was the only black kid at the school and he used to get the shit beat out of him all the time. And now this is how he's learned how to survive or something.
Yeah. What we have from the start is a love triangle. Right. We have Carlton's ex, like you said, is Lisa, who immediately hits it off with Will. And so we've got that glowering energy going on. There's a point where Carlton says, I always wanted a brother, like that. It's just like, Jesus.
But I got you two instead.
Yeah, you are crazy. He talks with Uncle Phil briefly, right? That's where we get the sort of bull in the china shop type vibe where he, sort of ambushes Uncle Phil talking to these other people. At this point, I have to say, the thing that happens sometimes where you watch porn and like the mother and the daughter are the same age. Like, I kind of felt that way about this family. Like, everyone's just, characterized in this version as very cool and trim and stylish and stuff. And so Uncle Phil isn't like a big fat guy with I guess he does have a beard, but
and a bald head. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's obviously he is, I'm sure, the age he's supposed to be, but I don't know.
We're also older now.
That's true. It just, the contrast doesn't come off that way.
He's like, Uncle Phil's hot. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Uncle Phil's
it's
very
like a
attractive.
Young, hot Uncle Phil. And so, it comes across more like Will hanging out with these just like sort of slightly older, classier guys. But it's Uncle Phil and his fellow muckety mucks, basically. And Will is running his mouth and kind of making a bad impression.
Yeah, but only because there's this weird secret, right? That Elisa, again, this like girlfriend love triangle character alludes to, that she's like, hey, she tells us later on when they're at the party, hey, I've known the Banks a long time. I've known Carlton since we were little. I didn't know about you. Like, I've never heard about you. And that is kind of like this through line, right? Like, yes, Uncle Phil is running for office and he makes a statement at this campaign event that's, the reason he's running is he wants to get rid of the school to prison pipeline. And, he's making a statement about young black men being targeted. And so Will, like, realizing that he's been kind of shunted away from several conversations because he's been saying things that allude to that he doesn't have this, silver spoon background. Yeah. He's smart enough to realize that they've been trying to like move him away from these fancy people that Uncle Phil is schmoozing with. And then he hears that. And then he goes to have a conversation with Uncle Phil that he's been looking forward to say thank you. Yeah. But by this point, he's upset because he's like, you only have me here as a token. And Uncle Phil's like, that's not the case. But what this Uncle Phil does that the other Uncle Phil also did well is that he's not good at speaking to Will. He is a father figure in a way, but he doesn't know how to have conversations with Will. Just like in the original series, the two of them didn't really know how to talk to one another, and it was always played for laughs. In this, it's played for frustration. Yeah. Like Will is he's back in this situation of feeling like he's not heard, just like he was feeling when he was stuck at the police station, just like he was feeling when when the crazy shit started happening on the play or on the basketball court. He just felt like all these things that were unfair were happening, and he couldn't cut through it to like stop this train that's rolling. And that's what's happening with him and Uncle Phil. Like, he knows he's not being understood. Uncle Phil just keeps kind of like barreling down on this. And like, neither one of them is really being honest or saying what needs to be said. So they just end up in this sort of stalemate where they don't like each other.
And you get it. It's sort of a recurring theme with all these conversations, that these are things that are going to happen incrementally. Conversations that are going to occur incrementally throughout the series. But what we do get here is a glimpse into that same dynamic where, just like you're saying, Uncle Phil's whole thing is about racial justice and stuff like that. And so you can tell there's going to be the same angle that Will and Phil are both passionate about stuff like that, but in different ways, and in some cases are sort of at odds with each other. And so you don't get the same speech about, you have the Malcolm X poster, I heard the brother talk, but you can tell there's going to be that same kind of energy, Exactly. And this very much feels like that similar dynamic where you have Uncle Phil being like, you take the system down from the inside, whereas Will is like, no, like, this shit's broken. You have to tell people it's broken. So speaking of the race stuff, you basically already said it, but this scene that happens at school is another example of this thing I'm talking about, where, again, I don't want to say that these things happen, because they happen all the time. And this was also a plot line on Atlanta, things with white guys singing along with the N-word in rap songs. So it is a real thing. And yet this scene, to me, again, just feels calculated in a way that Will gets in so much trouble and gets himself into a situation where he's run afoul of everybody. And it's like, just, we, the audience, couldn't possibly expect him to do anything any differently. These kids, it's not just that they're singing along with a song that says the N-word once or twice. Like, they found the song that says it the most. And, I don't know what song this is, but it's like part of the chorus. And so it is truly cringeworthy. Like, you just hear these kids in the locker room, these boys, just saying it. They're all white except for Carlton, just screaming the N-word again and again.
Carlton is in the center of the circle, dancing for their entertainment.
We've already learned about Carlton.
It was a very jarring moment to watch.
Yes, this is not.
He thinks that he's like one of the guys, but Will's perspective, which is what we're supposed to take, is this, like, look at all these white dudes standing around laughing at the black guy in the middle with his shirt off, dancing silly to this song.
Carlton has described himself as running the school, basically. And it is true, like, even in the original Fresh Prince sitcom, Carlton was never like a nerd in the way that Screech is. He's a nerd to us, the audience.
Right, as opposed to Will, but he always was pretty with it at his school, right?
Right, because they're all a bunch of nerds too.
Right.
And so likewise, this Carlton plays lacrosse, of course. So he is popular in the school, and he's friends with all the jocks and everything, and I'm sure also does well in school. So yeah, you're supposed to understand that he is like a socialite, as it were. And so Will, gets into a fight basically in the locker room with these white kids. He says straight up, stop saying that. You can't say that. That the rest, you plays out as you can imagine.
Yeah,
and
Carlton tells him he's wrong, and that just was like, it's like Will has the face like, this does not compute. I think what you're picking up on the whole, like, it seems like it's just set up so that, like, it's like Will never does anything wrong and he just keeps getting thrust in these situations. I think we're supposed to experience all of this from his perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it's accurate, right?
Yeah.
Like, to go into a brand new, like, total culture shock, right? Like, when I moved to Panama City, Florida, and I was like, the first people I met were like, oh, we're so happy you're here. Do you want to come to church with us on Wednesday nights? And I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, no, not really. Like, thank you for the invite, but I don't really go to church. well, what church do you go to? Like, no, I don't go to church. Well, honey, you're never going to have friends here if you don't go to church. And it was just like this, and like over and over again had this conversation, and none of these people became my friends because you can't be friends with some heathen who doesn't go to church. Yeah. But like, I didn't realize the impact I was having on all, like, I mean, I sort of did, but you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that fish out of water, that like total culture shock where you can't do anything right, even if you know what you're saying is fine.
Yeah, and they need to show us that in an economical way. Right. I guess my only thing, the same way when you're watching a horror movie and you go, oh, but wouldn't you call the police the very first thing? I'm watching this going like, wouldn't you say to Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil, you know, the details of what happened instead of just going like, but guys, come on, they were being jerks. Like, no, you would say specifically what actually happened, and then they might think about the situation differently, and he doesn't do that. He's just kind of like, come on.
Part of it is that snitches get stitches. So he's not telling, and he comes on real strong with Carlton when Carlton's like, oh, you going to tell on me now? Because he sees him snorting what he thinks is coke, and he's like, it's Xanax, and he's like, are you going to tell on me now? He's like, no, I don't snitch.
But that's
like,
a different
really
kind
big
of
and
telling.
hard. But like, I think all of that is Trey was the one who got the gun.
Yeah.
And so he is not going to tell on his friend. He's not going to tell anybody.
But I think telling on white guys for rapping along with the N-word, to me, that's not snitching. That's calling people out. Like, to me, it's got a different connotation. But maybe you're right. Maybe that's why he doesn't tell Uncle Phil.
Right, like you don't tell the grown-ups what the kids are doing, basically.
Yeah, just to me, again, look, I'm the last person to speculate on this, but Uncle Phil, just with everything we just said about the way that Uncle Phil and Will see the world, you might mention that these were white kids saying the N-word in the locker room.
No, you 100% would. And like, who knows? Maybe they did. But there is this whole thing that even Aunt Viv is trying to explain that there are ways you don't have to change yourself. You don't have to give up who you are. But there are ways that you have to
adapt.
Adapt, exactly, to fit in this world. And, you know, the other thing is, it's not just that he isn't telling the adults what's going on. It's that he doesn't know how to talk to them.
Yeah.
And I think when he tries to talk to them, like you see him have kind of real conversations with Aunt Viv, but she never asks what happened. She just trusts that he is struggling in the same way that she struggled when she came here from Philly, right? Like, it's Uncle Phil that he isn't talking to. And again, it's because they don't know how to talk to one another. They get sort of like instantly triggered by something else the other one says. And so they can't ever actually talk about the stuff that's important.
Yeah. And again, it's just a more complicated thing. So it's going to unfold more slowly, you know, and it is, from my perspective, comparing it to the original Fresh Prince, kind of jarring, because you are used to that really simple dynamic of Will is just all crazy and silly and Uncle Phil is serious, and this is more complicated.
And it's going to be wrapped up in 30 minutes or 22 minutes because that's our show, whereas this is an hour-long drama. It's serialized, like the storylines are meant to connect into the next, episodes and beyond, so.
Exactly. And so, yeah, this being an hour long, it's basically 6 acts instead of 3 acts. The 4th and 5th acts are this party that they go to, typical teen movie fashion, get a big chunk of a party.
Carlton and Will make a deal that they're going to pretend like they're getting along.
Yes,
so that way...
To get Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv off their backs.
Exactly. So that way Carlton doesn't have to show Will around anymore. He doesn't have to try to make his friends like him. Will can just go his own way and not bother Carlton. And Carlton agrees and is like, great, we're going to pretend like we're getting along just fine. We'll both go to this party, we'll go on about our business.
Yes. Only problem is the aforementioned love triangle, and you mentioned Chekhov's gun. We also have Chekhov's inability to swim, right? Now, of course, there's a whole sort of sinister history behind the stereotype of why black people aren't good at swimming. There's a great John Oliver piece that you can watch all about that. Yep. But that's something that's been established earlier in the episode because Lisa is a swimmer, and that's how Will Will flirts with her is by helping her time her swimming laps. But when she says, "Oh, do you want to take a swim?" he kind of casually brushes it off. "Oh, no, I don't like to swim." And then you get the sense when he first arrives at the pool party, he kind of flinches when he goes near the pool. So he's not comfortable with that.
Yep.
And so, kind of cutting to the chase here, after he's been flirting with Lisa at the party for a while, Carlton sees them kissing, fresh off of snorting freaking meth or whatever. He's snorting Xanax to the dome.
And having a conversation with this asshole kid that was like screaming the N-word earlier, right? This kid, Connor. Connor is talking to Carlton, friend to friend, and is like, "Hey man, I know you're trying to play it cool with Lisa and like waiting for her to come back to you, but it isn't working and you're ending up looking like the bitch while she's moving on."
Yeah, you're getting cucked, man, by your own cousin.
Well, not even. Like, he was just, I don't even know if he's seeing it, but he was just saying, like, he was just being like, "You're looking like a bitch," because he's moving on. And so he snorts another line of Xanax, and Connor walks away, and he kind of stands up like, "Okay, I'm going to go find Lisa and I'm going to have a talk with her." And he takes like 2 steps out into the pool deck area and sees them kissing.
Again, just to comment on the mise en scène, this show is filmed very, elaborately, and the one specialty of this director, we got it earlier with the dude in the jail cell, and we get it now with Carlton, sort of film people from a distance, like glowering menacingly towards you, like looking from like 50 yards away and just seeing somebody staring with hatred in their eyes towards the camera. They really capture that. And so, Carlton, again, miles away from the Alfonso Ribeiro lovable version. This is only like, it's probably our 12th minute with this character, and he's like striding across the pool area to drown his freaking cousin.
Yeah, well, he is mad at him. He doesn't know, right? He doesn't know. They basically don't know anything about each other because they haven't really been in a lot of contact. But so, Will and Lisa are dancing, and now the dancing has sort of turned into a kiss, and Carlton sees it, strides over, shoves Will into the pool. Lisa's like, "What the hell, Carlton?" And then we get this moment of Will like floating down deep.
We get back into the trippy surrealist stuff.
And the throne from the beginning is kind of floating down to the bottom of the pool, and the crown that he and his mom keep talking about, that he just has to reach out and take, just a little bit longer, put up with this for a little bit longer. You're in the right place. You're safe. You can reach out and take your crown as soon as you're ready. The crown is floating up towards the top of the pool, and it's this like trippy kind of sequence where he's just sort of floating, and
the pool isn't a pool, it's like a throne room.
And then Lisa jumps in. Jay said he doesn't know how to swim, but in my head, Lisa yells that at Carlton, even though that didn't happen.
No, usually I keep my thoughts for the podcast, but I just couldn't. It was so.
You're like, he doesn't know how to swim. And so then we get a few moments of the trippiness, and then Lisa dives in and, rescues him, pulls him up on the side of the pool. She's trying to tell him, just cough, just breathe, it's fine. And Carlton's like, he's just doing it for attention. And again, we get these moments where Will just makes bad decisions, right? At this point, some dude pushed you in the pool. He's the asshole, not you. You don't have to defend yourself. But Will is blind to that and is like, "I gotta protect my rep, man," and stands up and punches Connor, who I guess, I don't know why he gets in the way. Yeah, he stands up and kind of gets in the way. It devolves. And then he walks over to Carlton, and we get this intense moment where they're just staring at each other, and Will is debating and deciding whether or not to do it. And then the last shot of the episode, it goes to black as Will punches him and Will punches Carlton in the face, and the punch is what takes it to black, and that's end of episode.
So throughout that whole thing, the only real sort of sense of like the original dynamic we get is that breakfast scene that we kind of skipped over, where the whole family is together. In my mind, that was after the party, but I guess it's before the party.
It's after the fundraiser, but before.
Exactly.
Because that's when Aunt Viv is like, hey, I know you have lacrosse practice, but like, and you have that party later on, but you need to take
before even their school day, I guess. But so that breakfast scene is our only sense of like sort of taking me back to the original sitcom of having the whole family be together, having the tone be a little bit lighter, you know, and just, we sort of get the sense like, okay, like we're going to get a little bit of this, but I think this is going to be more of a soap opera about Will and Carlton, Will trying to, you know, figure out his way in this crazy California world, and Carlton being a psychopath with a drug problem and, you know, some sort of checkered past that we're going to learn about.
Well, I don't know about checkered past, but probably like that he had
trauma or something.
That he had to like scrape his way into the status that he now has.
But yeah, I will say
that's my guess.
For something that started out as pretty much a punchline to me, like I can't believe they did this. Like who would want to watch this? Like you're saying, oh, make a trailer as a joke or a proof of concept, sure. But by the end of this, I was like, look, I don't know how this interacts with the original sitcom. Like
I don't think it does. It is exactly what you were talking about. It's a reboot.
Yeah, it is bizarre to me. Like to think of it in terms of that is a little strange, but taken on its own, like it does seem to me not having a ton to compare it to, because this isn't really the kind of thing I'm into, but it seems like a pretty high quality, sort of soapy drama.
Yeah,
type
it feels
thing.
like a Sopranos kind of.
Well, but see,
what I mean? Like that kind of a thing.
I do think the statement that Bel-Air is as good as The Sopranos, like I don't know if you appreciate how controversial an opinion that is.
Did I say as good? I said right now they're the same for me because I'm still like watching them.
No, and you are absolutely entitled to that opinion.
People are going to come for me is what you're saying.
Besides that very solid analysis, looking back on all of these, MVP, any thoughts on the whole notion of rebooting a 90s show? What do we think?
Well, MVP for this podcast, for being what our podcast is, which is the sitcom study, MVP has to be Fuller House. It fits the bill. It is what we watch. It did all the things that it needed to do in, you know, giving us some fandering and giving us some new and just having better writing than some of our other options that we watch today. I think Fuller House, way to go. You did the like legacy picking up where the old show left off type of reboot in quotes. Great. And I give a round of applause to Bel-Air because what they did do by hitting all those beats in the first half hour, 40 minutes was like, it was enough fan service that really got me into it. And I just kept waiting for the next time. Like at one point, Will even says to Aunt Viv, I got in one little fight. My mom got scared.
Oh, that's of at least three direct quotes from the theme song.
From the theme song that happened in that part. And I loved that, you know, and they purposefully zoom in on the fuzzy dice in the mirror of the cab and all of the things. And it was just like, I really appreciated all of that. It knows its source material well. I think what you're picking up on with that balance between the gritty Will and the charismatic, like comedic Will, I think that I hope that like becomes more and more of like a whole person and not this battle between the two sides of him where one side will win out. Like I think we all have light and dark inside of us. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing to set up. And I went and looked up this actor, Jabari Banks, to see what else he does, and it's not much because this was like his first kind of big thing. But like I want to see him in other things. Like he blew me away.
Yeah, he's got a really interesting look. Like his face seems like they made it a little bit smaller or something in Photoshop.
He has very big eyes, and he's skinny, so he has kind of like hollow cheeks.
It has almost like a sort of cartoon character come to life kind of thing, but very striking and very interesting looking guy. Yeah, I mean, look, like I said at the start, reboots, even though they didn't call them that, like they've always been doing this, right? You know, just like I said, they're talking about Dracula and Tarzan or whatever. You know, we're always going to be getting a new Batman. You know, we're always going to be getting new versions of the old stuff. And I think that's fine. You know, my only hope is that they always keep some portion of the stuff that we're seeing for new ideas. You know, it gets depressing when you have a year where you look at the top 10 movies and they were all sequels or reboots or whatever. Like you always want to have some new stuff. But so that said, I don't want to be grumpy about everything being a remake or a sequel or something, because it's sort of, you know, tale as old as time. In terms of these specifically, the Girl Meets World, you know, was pretty bad for all the reasons that I said. I found that pretty tough to get through. Fuller House and Bel-Air, both, you know, I think the highest compliment I could give is that they were pretty much the best versions I could conceive of what they are. You know, if you start out with that assignment of reunite the cast of Full House and do a sort of fun,
like
celebratory,
a launch in the new direction.
A celebratory pilot, and introduce younger characters and, you know, film it exactly the same way and all of that. And the assignment for Bel-Air is, come up with this sort of cinematic, down-to-earth, you know...
Yeah, what if this happened to a kid in real life?
Yeah,
like, what would it look like?
Racially charged version of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air origin story. Like, both of those things are not things that I would really sign up to be first in line to see, and they both do a pretty good job of figuring out a way to do that in a way that's fun and is not too, you know, embarrassing or tedious or whatever. So they're both really good. The Bel-Air is the one that surprised me the most. The Bel-Air is the one that most, like, when I was watching it, I was surprised at the extent to which I enjoyed it and thought it was actually setting itself up to be like a pretty good series.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
All right. So much for the 90s reboots. What are we talking about next time?
Next week, we are diving into some long-running gags that happen once a year on some of our favorite shows. Cheers, we're going to watch Bar Wars. Community, we're going to watch Paintball. How I Met Your Mother, we're going to watch the first episode of Slap Bet. And Brooklyn Nine-Nine, we're going to watch the very first Halloween Heist. So those episodes are... Cheers, Season 4, Episode 9, From Beer to Eternity, and Season 6, Episode 23, Bar Wars. Community, Season 1, Episode 23, Modern Warfare. How I Met Your Mother, Season 2, Episode 9, Slap Bet, in parentheses, Robin Sparkles. And Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Season 1, Episode 6, Halloween.
Yep, that's next week. And until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.